right, so for the first time ever, I attended E3. I know it's silly. I've been writing about games for years. Went to E3. The prospect of going to Los Angeles in June, getting around that city, going to all this stuff, just didn't sound all that fun to me. But now I've gone, so I have some first-hand experience in what E3 is like. And you know, the short version is that it's a shit show. It is a lot. It's a lot of lines, a lot of crowds, a lot of hype, and the amount of actual hands-on time that I was able to get was less than I would have liked. Now, granted, I sort of set myself up for that because I decided I wanted to go and see all the pre-show stuff, and I couldn't make it work to see all the pre-show stuff and go to all 3 days of E3. So my actual time on the show floor was limited. But by the time I was done with what I was able to see on the show floor, I was pretty much done with wanting to be there. I'm not hugely fond of big crowds, and you know, I get a little claustrophobic. And on the E3 show floor, it was incredibly crowded. I hear it's much worse this year because it's open to the public. But it was so crowded. When I went to my meeting with Activision to try out Call of Duty World War II, I walked into the South Hall of the LA Convention Center, and I walked into the area, and on the left was the big Activision setup, and on the right was Ubisoft and some other things. And I could barely get to the press check-in desk. There were just such a sea of people, so tightly packed that you could barely move. I mean, you were constantly navigating your way around people. Then at the press check-in desk, of course, I'm in line behind like 6 people who aren't press, who don't know what they're doing, because it's so hard to even tell where the line begins for you know, just the gamers that are there. And just one thing after another, like that. The Nintendo booth area was set up like New Donk City, which, you know, just a big Nintendo themed like enclave. So again, so tightly packed, it was like Mardi Gras or something. And for some people, this is probably great, but I just, you know, it was enough just getting from point A to point B, and getting queued in to the press, you know, the press section of each of these booths. That was time consuming and difficult. And I was, you know, because I'm press, I was moved to the front of the line pretty quickly, you know, or, you know, it relative to the people on the show floor, they're just the, you know, the ticket holders, the paying customers or whatever, you know, I didn't have to wait in any kind of line compared to them, but it was still just an enormous amount of work to get around E3. And so your day immediately shrinks. I mean, you just don't have as much time doing, you know, trying things out as you would like, because just getting around is such a chore. You know, and I did have, so in my time in LA, I tried out a number of games. I tried out Star Wars Battlefront 2. I tried out the new DLC coming to Battlefield 1. I tried out A Way Out, the new, I don't know if you've heard of that one, but it's a new indie game from the makers of Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. I played Call of Duty World War II, Assassin's Creed, Origins, Far Cry 5, Mario Rabbids, Super Mario Odyssey, Strange Brigade, and then some other stuff. I'm gonna have to look at my notes, but quite a few games, you know, but just the amount of time, and of course, so I also didn't want to stay in downtown. I stayed in Venice Beach. I wanted to be on the beach while I was there, so then it was just like Ubering around town, you know. EA had their stuff in Hollywood, and then everything else was downtown, and it was just like, oh my god, I never want to go to LA again after this. I mean, it was fun, but I did go to I went to the EA live show, their big press conference. I went to the Sony showcase. I went to the Bethesda showcase, Microsoft. Is that it? I missed Ubisoft because I was stuck in Hollywood doing EA stuff, and it was just all got pushed back. There's no way I was going to make it in time. I kind of wish I'd been to that one, but you know, EA's was probably the smallest, and it was in the Hollywood Palladium, and it was just kind of a It was pretty short, but they had a lot of fanfare. They had like stormtroopers march out. They had like the drum section of a marching band. You know, all the fanfare stuff, and lots of focus on influencers at that one. Lots of focus on YouTubers and stuff like that. YouTubers are really becoming the marketing wing of these great big video game publishers in a lot of ways. Take that how you will, but it's interesting to see how many YouTubers are part of the promotional materials essentially and the hype generation machine of the current AAA industry. Bethesda's was by far the most interesting and most pointless of all of the E3 press conferences. It took place in an outdoor area that was like shaped like a big L, and it was decked out like a carnival, like a freak show Fallout 4 carnival basically. And there were sections for each of their games that you could go walk around in, and there was an open bar and carnival food like candied apples, turkey legs, like a Ren Fair or something. They announced a couple of cool things at the end of their presser. The Wolfenstein sequel looks really good. The Evil Within 2, I never really got into the first game, so I'm having a hard time deciding if the second one looks great or not. It was a good trailer. The Dishonored standalone, not really DLC, but like but standalone game actually looks really quite good. I have this feeling about the Dishonored series right now that it never quite lives up to its potential from a story perspective. The gameplay is always great, story not so much. We'll see. I'm excited for it anyways. I do love playing the Dishonored games. But then there was just so much focus on stuff that we already kind of know about, you know. I cannot get worked up in any way about really VR games. So like I think about Fallout 4 or Doom in VR, and I think those games are going to suck compared to the regular versions, which are great. You know, Doom is great. It's a fast, frenetic, crazy, brutal game. In VR, I just can't imagine that the inputs are there to make that same level of fun. I mean, VR is a visual experience, but it's not very great at communicating game mechanics. It's just not really built for games. Until we have like full VR experiences where we can just walk around, like like in Star Trek or something, then VR is just going to always kind of be lackluster, I think. And that's how I feel about that. Basically, paid mods were announced. I don't know. It was interesting when Pete Hines got up on stage. He said, and everyone applauded. He said something to the effect of like, I can't even imagine the bar tab I just paid for that applause. And that's kind of true. Basically, Bethesda spent a bunch of money. I have no idea how much, but a bunch of money putting together this elaborate carnival with a Ferris wheel, free drinks. Tons of people were there, eating, and there was lots of staff there, security staff, waitresses, waiters, bartenders. And basically to see a 40-minute conference and where a couple games are announced. And I think to myself, okay, all this money, like, is it really worth it? When really, Bethesda could have just, at any week of the year, just, teased an announcement coming on YouTube and Twitch or Instagram or whatever, and, spent a couple of days hyping it online and then announcing it with a big trailer and stuff. I mean, that seems like a way, way cheaper way to announce a game and to drive hype than this press conference. And the same goes, I kind of understand it more for like Microsoft announcing the Xbox One X, although they'd already basically had that announced for a long time. So I question, after going to all these press conferences, I question the value to shareholders, to consumers, to these companies of even having these at all. Something like a Nintendo Direct, like it, not necessarily it, but something like that makes more sense in this day and age. Just do away with these expensive press conferences. They're not necessary, especially since there are multiple ones throughout the year. I mean, PlayStation still has PSX. There's still the Tokyo Game Show. We already had GDC, but there's all these different events. I don't see the utility in these big press conferences. As a journalist, I certainly don't. I don't know why I would ever go to one again, because I can do more from home watching the live stream than going there and having crappy internet waiting in line. The line to Microsoft's was absolutely abhorrent. Like, it was so, you walk around this huge building and like there was police with dogs sniffing everyone's bags, and you had to have like 5 different people check your barcode on your phone and your ID and all this nonsense. Then you get seated in this Coliseum in the Galen Center that's just vast. I was so high up I got dizzy, and all the people on the floor, well, they're not press, that's for sure. They're like a fake audience down there. They're all cheering and excited over every little thing that's said. I mean, it was really pretty absurd, the show that Microsoft put on. I did enjoy. I mean, I think the Xbox One X looks great as an enthusiast. I think it looks great, but I still don't really. I mean, I'll get into that later. We're just talking about the events right now. Sony had a better. I think maybe Sony was my favorite of the events. For one thing, the pre-show, they let you into a kind of big, long room. There was a bunch of games you could play in there, and there weren't terrible lines or anything. There was also, catering and drinks, and there was lots of bartenders. So unlike Bethesda's event, where you had to wait in like a 40-person line to get a little tiny drink, there was like 9 bartenders at every station. So you just walk right up and get a beer. Which, okay, maybe I'm placing too much emphasis on the liquor side of things, but that matters, And it was fun because there were a lot of games to play. I was able to. I didn't play Ni no Kuni 2, but I did get to watch somebody else playing it, and that looks interesting. I played Knack 2, which I have yet to make my mind up. I didn't play the first Knack. It was one of those games that kind of fell by the wayside. Didn't get great reviews anyways. But I had fun with it, and Mark Cerny was standing right there while I was playing, so that was kind of cool. Far Cry 5 I ended up playing there, so I didn't have to play it at E3 itself. That was handy. And there was some VR stuff that I didn't play. There was a bunch of games, but so that was kind of cool, get a little snack, have a beer, play a few games, then go into the press conference. And I liked the press conference. It wasn't like Sony had anything really amazing to announce, but their show was very engaging. I mean, they had one screen, and then behind it they had another bigger screen, and they had the trailers playing on the front screen, and then visuals in the back, and then they had things like like fog and pyrotechnics, and the Call of Duty trailer that they played there had fire and explosions. It would hurt your ears, so it was so loud, and then just fake smoke everywhere, and it was quite the show. It was the one show, like actual show, that was cool to see in person. That was, I think, probably a much better experience in person than on a stream. And I also like that there was very little talking. Once again, Sony, and they've done this in the past, there was just mostly gameplay, and they really showed that PlayStation 4 has a lot of really cool games, already out, coming up, DLC coming up for like Horizon Zero Dawn. Just Sony really did a good job emphasizing that. And I know Microsoft tried, and they showed off a lot of games, but I really feel like Microsoft still hasn't shown us very much that's super compelling. Like, Sea of Thieves just doesn't look that great to me. It looks sort of boring. I mean, State of Decay 2 looks cool. There's some indie stuff coming out on Xbox that looks cool. The Xbox One X, it's the most powerful console ever made, but we don't have like the killer app for it yet. We need that new Halo or something, or new IP that looks really amazing. We saw, just in terms of cross-platform games, I think that maybe the killer app was Anthem. I think that looks that looks like a great game. I've written about this already, about how I think it doesn't look like a great BioWare game necessarily. But it looks, you fly around this sci-fi planet and shoot monsters, and it looks fun. So yeah, this is my feelings. 15 minutes of thoughts on E3. I just think that the cost associated and the time associated with these big press conferences seems a little absurd. I understand the pageantry has its own value, but it just feels unnecessary. E3 itself is far too crowded. I don't have any desire to go back. Not because it wasn't fun to play the games and meet with some developers and talk with these people making these games. And I'm glad I was able to do that. It was fun to go to Nintendo, play Super Mario Odyssey, Mario Rabbids game, all that. But the setup is not conducive to someone in my line of work. It really isn't. It's too crowded. I've been to GDC. That was a much better experience because you could actually breathe. You could actually get to try things out. You could meet with people, and it wasn't so noisy and loud and hot. And oh my God, it was so hot at E3. It was like there was no AC in that building. Especially in some rooms, you'd go into like a demo session or something, and it would just be sweltering. Everyone was sweating. And I played Skull and Bones at the Ubisoft booth, and there was 10 people playing and like 5 PR people watching and helping out. And boy, by the end of those, I felt like I was being cooked in an oven. So I just don't know if E3. I feel like it needs to change. It needs to be a conference where, at some point maybe it opens up to the public, but before then there's time for journalists and industry people and influencers and all of that to have some time with games and some time with developers and actually have something that can be informative later. And I just feel like, rather than having these big press conferences, if nothing else, these companies should do a little bit more like Sony did maybe, and have events, showcases where you can come and actually play a bunch of games. But maybe, also some of these games that were announced, not just games that we've already heard about. So that's kind of where I stand with that. It was an experience. I'm glad I went, kind of. I have a bunch of stuff I need to write now about, hands-on impressions, and I'm trying to get some B-roll footage. I couldn't capture any footage, but I'll try to get some B-roll footage, and I think I took a couple little videos with my phone, and I can post those too. So, anyways, if you have any questions, let me know. Thanks for watching. Peace.
Thanks.